Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. Today we are talking about IT budgeting, a super exciting subject. Maybe not, but we're hopefully going to make it super engaging for you today. My name is Becca Zaagman. I'm on the marketing team here at Worksighted, and I work really hard to bring you content like blogs, tech riffs, and these webinars to help you increase your efficiency and decrease your frustrations as it relates to technology. And this is Adam. Adam, want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Adam Devereaux. I've been with Worksighted for about 9 years now. I've been working in IT for about 20. The company was a little different when I first started, and I've fulfilled a lot of different roles, but a lot of what I focus on now is working with our clients on bigger picture strategy and aligning technology goals with business goals.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So today, you guys, we want this to be a super interactive webinar. So please use that Q&A section to ask us questions. We'll be answering them on the fly as long as it relates to the content that we are talking about. We've got Sam and Ryan behind the scenes working to help make sure this is a great experience for you. So you might be wondering, what is Worksighted Next? This is our brand for all of our educational content. So like I said, webinars, tech riffs, our events that we do throughout the year are all Worksighted Next, part of this brand, part of this series that we put together to bring you awesome content that'll help solve your business's problems. So with that, today, like I said, we're talking about how to make an IT budget that your leadership team will love. And Adam, I know this is something that you're particularly passionate about and have a lot of experience in. So why don't you share a little bit about why this is something you're passionate about and what experience has brought you to be passionate about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's not really in jest, because in a lot of ways, IT budget is where the rubber meets the road for technology and improvements for the organization moving forward. So there's really kind of two sides of the coin with an IT budget. One is the like structure itself, the spreadsheet, literally, right? So there's the numbers, but there's another side of that, which is really more on the decision making. What should we put in our budget? What should we be thinking about? What changes that the organization has coming? How will they impact IT spend? And really, the question that I want to talk a little bit about is, how do we determine if we have a good IT budget? What makes a good IT budget, right? Is it just as little money as possible, right?
Probably sounds good to a lot of people.
Right. I would argue that a good IT budget is a vehicle that helps empower the organization to achieve its goals, right? So we can judge it based on how well does it accomplish that. Right. And we really need to take into consideration a lot of different factors. So one of the ways that we can kind of evaluate that, and what I found a lot of organizations have as their core goals in a lot of ways, is to increase revenue, decrease costs, or decrease risks, right? It's a helpful framing to categorize our IT budgeting, our technology implementation under those factors, right? If we're implementing security controls, we can be reducing risk. If we're actually improving the performance of the systems, that can decrease costs because it's increasing employee revenue or efficiency. Enabling the business to be more agile and pursue new business opportunities is a way to increase revenue as well. So technology is very impactful to most organizations. The vast majority of them, technology is interwoven through everything that they do.
It touches everything. There's hardly anything in our organization that doesn't have a technology component to it. And that's what makes the IT budget so important, and so important for us to be really proactive about. So
there's a metaphor I want to talk about that can help us frame some of the decision making, and that's the concept of technical debt. So it sounds a little imposing, but it's basically a metaphor to help us understand how some decisions can be different than other decisions, why one choice may be better than another choice. And we use the term debt because, similar to going into financial debt to pursue some new endeavor or to accomplish something, if you don't pay that down, if you don't build that into your model and start paying off that interest and get to a sustainable place, you're going to eventually be bogged down by that interest. It's going to be impactful, right? It's going to prevent you from focusing your money, and in this case, your time and energy, on the things that are really most helpful to go back to that core goal of helping the organization succeed.
Right. So like a good example of that could be I choose to buy refurbished computers for all the users at my company. That's going to save me money today. It might look great on my year one budget. But what happens is if those computers need to have more work done on them in a year, maybe they have to be replaced in only 2 years because they're not functioning as well, you're going to end up spending more over the life cycle of those computers than if you were to buy maybe a better computer now that's going to last 5 years and keep your users up and running for a while.
Yeah, that's a good example, and really it extends into the software that we pick, the general infrastructure that we have. And there's a real challenge in IT in that there's no building code, right? So there is no standard in many cases, and that's brought some good things in terms of innovation, but it also has brought a challenge because there's no easy way sometimes to look from the outside and see what's really there from a substance standpoint.
Right.
So similar to working with a contractor who replaces your roof, but maybe cuts corners, right? Does it in a way that's hidden, and then it impacts you in the long run. It doesn't last as long as it should, right? So we see systems that are put in place, they initially accomplish the goal up front, but because of either issues, lack of expandability, lack of management, you run into challenges. And one of the most important costs that you need to take into consideration with a budget is our most important currency, which is time. Right. So our time, the rest of the staff time, everybody's time is really the most valuable thing that we have to spend. And we're making decisions now that are going to decide what are we going to be doing in the future. Right. So what is future Adam going to be spending his time on is often dictated based on the decisions I make right now. Yeah. So there are some issues with this metaphor, though. One of the challenges, it's really hard to quantify, right? So if I want to know how much in debt I am and how much interest I'm going to have to pay, I can just turn to my debtors, right, or my the bank, and they'll be happy to tell me exactly how much I owe. In IT spend, it's hard to quantify that up front, and also not every decision is appropriate for every other organization, right? So there's different choices, and it's not always bad, right? Going into debt technically with what you implement can actually be helpful to get moving on something, just like going into debt financially can often be helpful to, start a new enterprise, for example. But the challenge is you need to document that. You need to make sure that you're taking that into consideration so that moving forward, you can plan to pay that down, and it's documented. So you're saying, we made this choice now that allowed us to kind of get going down this direction, but we knew that it wasn't going to last in the long term, or that we would have to do some additional spend down the road.
So a good way to think about that is total cost of ownership. So back to that PC example, maybe, we've got 20 new users and we need to get all of them computers right now. So we use refurbished machines today, understanding that we need to get better machines down the road and that might be more expensive. So we're making a sacrifice today that has a risk involved with it that everyone's aware of. And like you said, it's documented and we can move forward, but it's known. It's not like pushed under a rug.
Yeah, and another example of that might be implementing a new software system on existing server infrastructure. And perhaps that software system is increasing our reliance on technology, and we really haven't gone into full consideration for what's the impact on availability. Do we have the right server infrastructure in place? Do we have the right networking infrastructure in place? And that's something I really want to focus on, is that essential infrastructure in order to help us in the future to focus on the things we should be thinking about, or bring the most value is probably the best way to put it. We need to make sure that we have the correct essential infrastructure in place, because just like building a building, we need to have a good foundation. We need to have good structural components. We need to ensure that the structure itself is sound for what we want to do inside of it. And I've seen cases where an organization has persistently made the choice to do the short-term, cheapest choice in front of them, and eventually you get to where it's the money trap situation, right? You're almost in technical bankruptcy, right? The core of it is so problematic, and you're constantly chasing all of these issues that putting out fires is 90% of what you do. So that's part of where IT budgeting is really so important, because if you do it right, or if you make the right decisions or the best decisions you can, oftentimes that will help make sure that your team, your organization can focus on the higher value things.
Yeah. I'm picturing a network closet with just like Band-Aids all over it. Like every time something comes up, we do like a little fix, a little fix, a little fix, and all of a sudden you walk in, you're like, this isn't a good situation at all.
Right, and that's an example of the interest, the technical interest that we pay. Is every time we need to troubleshoot something, if it takes us twice as long, right? Every time an issue pops up, if we have to spend more time fixing it, we're paying for our previous decisions there. So it's just something that's helpful to consider with. You know, an example, it might be that of essential infrastructure and understanding the impact of that is, let's say we want to go with a new phone system, but we don't have the right switching, the right wiring, the right internet connectivity in place. And if we make that move, we'll actually be harming ourselves in a lot of ways. Even if we say, well, we'll just roll with it, what often seems to happen is users get frustrated, the political will starts to collapse, right? It can really negatively impact how people, your users, the rest of the organization perceives IT. And there are ways that you can approach the limited resources that we have in accomplishing things. One way to consider that is to do something like basically do part of the implementation up front. So rather than doing a cheaper version, right? Like maybe putting in subpar or switches that are hard to manage in your network, you put in the switches that you're most capable of working on, that give you the best bang for your buck, but still leaving some of the older switches in lower impact areas, and then planning on replacing those like next year. So that way you're at least starting to lay the bricks of the right foundation, and then you can continue to build on that, not compromising from the beginning.
And we'll talk about how to add in as part of your budget a year 2 and a year 3 and even a year 5, where you can like basically prime the pump for your teams to say, I'm making this choice now, or we as an organization are like making this choice now, but it's a commitment to a year 2 and a year 3 situation as well.
Exactly.
So awesome. I think that is a great foundation for us. We've got 6 specific tips to jump into today. Hopefully you've caught our tech riff, how to create a super simple IT budget with Killian. Part 1 was released a couple weeks ago, and part 2 is going to be coming out later today. So definitely check those out. Those give us a high level view. And today we're going to really dive into that 6-step process. So number 1 is research. And this is probably the most time intensive part, but
difficult in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
yeah, it's difficult. A challenge to get our arms around. And one thing that we kind of divide this research into is what we might call the systems research or tech research. And that's really getting a baseline understanding. And I just want to say, you know, initially, no budget's ever going to be perfect. No budget's going to be 100% accurate. Every organization's going to be different. And a lot of you may already understand a lot of these fundamentals. The way that we're approaching this is kind of from the perspective of somebody who's new to this position and kind of a high level view of the overall picture of what an IT budget should have. So many of you may have some more advanced tips or things that you have found in your experience can be impactful. We'd love it if you share that in the Q&A, and we can kind of learn from the larger community, all learn from the larger community. So within the realm of tech research, this is where you really want to get an understanding of what your fleet of infrastructure is, what your life cycle around that is, what your replacement costs look like, taking an inventory of all of your software licensing, things that need to be renewed, you know, audit the entire environment essentially. There are tools that can help with this. Obviously, you can create spreadsheets and do things manually. There are a lot of software products called like IT asset management, or ways that you can get some automated results. And this is where you start getting to where there's an example there. If it takes you days to figure out what you have, that's kind of technical debt because you don't have the right systems in place that allow you to dashboard that stuff and see it very quickly.
Yeah, and this is all about getting to the entire scope of your current IT setup. So it's finding out what you have, but then also finding out if it's working. So make sure to audit your environmental health in this as well. Like, are your firewalls up to date? Do you have the right security measures in process?
Battery backups, are they in place where they should be? Are the batteries, you know, been replaced within a 3-year life cycle? Things along those lines.
Yeah, especially if you're new to an organization, this is a great time to get to know what assets you do have. And then we also have this people research section, which takes it a big step farther. And this is where kind of that framing aspect comes into it. So we want you to go and meet with managers, understand the goals, upcoming projects from different departments. What are people planning and dreaming about? And then in a further step, you'll actually take that to the next level and say what technology needs are needed in order to actually make that happen, to see that come to a reality. meet with finance to understand their priorities.
Right. So an example there might be for one organization, CapEx may be better than OpEx.
Right.
Although our hands are often tied these days with a lot of subscription services, there are ways to try to maximize CapEx versus OpEx. And a lot of times what finance people will tell you is that predictability is better than just like an initial low cost.
Right.
So building better cost predictability in by having the right kind of service contracts in place, the right kind of warranties in place, that you can guarantee the value of that asset over that depreciation cycle can be very important to finance teams as well.
Yep, and ultimately we want technology to be helpful, right? Our job as IT people is to help our users be efficient, be productive. So take a technology pulse about from the users. So whether that's a survey or just going around to talk to people, are people generally happy with the current setup, or are they pretty frustrated? So yeah, we're pulling up on our screen right now a document that we'll send out afterwards. It's a template. And
it's pretty basic. It's fairly high level, kind of targeted towards more small, medium-sized organizations.
Absolutely.
You know, you may have something more sophisticated for your own needs, but this is a good starting point for a lot of people.
Yep, so this is just a way to capture the information that you're gathering in this step. So technology pulse, rank it from 1 to 10, and then make that green, yellow, or red. And then you can track this throughout the years to say, man, I would love to see this at an 8 within the next 2 years. Here's some specific ways that that the IT team is going to implement in order to raise that number.
Yeah, and an example of that might be that we put automation in place to help make sure that the new user creation and new hiring process is more automated. Maybe putting in place like a cloud-based learning management system that has videos, and we can create IT content for that, so that the IT team's time is more focused on like one-on-one interaction and training and really making sure that new user is onboarded correctly, because that can be really impactful to their perception of the business. Something that's attached with this as well that's really powerful is to create an organization-wide project mapping or just project overview. Just getting a sense of what are all the different initiatives and projects that the different departments are working on right now. And there's different coding schemes out there to say, is this high priority, medium priority, low priority? How difficult or easy is it to implement? And that can help to figure out where should time be invested in.
Great. Awesome. I think, one more point on that one. Seek to understand the company's past relationship to IT. So did the budget go way over last year? Is it always, a difficult conversation when we even bring up the term IT budget? Or has there been, a great relationship to the budget? You guys have been really, skim in the past. So know what you're walking into when you walk in to present that budget, so that you, can just have a firm understanding and be able to
for success.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So the next section, really just kind of a basic overview of what asset management looks like, and then creating some life cycle around that equipment, right? It can really help you to stay proactive with your budgeting and spend. If when you buy a piece of equipment, you already kind of have an idea for how long you're expecting that to be in the environment under a business as usual scenario, which we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Yep, and so some examples of this would be every PC has a life cycle of between 3 and 5 years, depending on how you originally set it up.
Best practice, right?
Yeah. Best practice, 3 to 5 years. So we recommend having your computers on a life cycle of replacing 20% a year. So that would be, any user would get a new computer basically every 5 years. So that is a line item that you can have in every single year's budget to replace 20% of your fleet. Similarly, okay.
I was going to say one important thing too is to generally when we do budgeting, you want to give yourself a little bit of rounding up, right? Making sure that you're accounting for cost inflations. Something we ran into with computer purchasing is sometimes over the last few years when there were SSD and memory cost increases, when there were the tariffs were impacted, the average PC cost for both desktops and laptops jumped up by a fairly significant percentage. So the budget that maybe was set a year or two ago now is not going nearly as far. So that's something to keep in mind.
Do you want to pull up the spreadsheet really quick? So there are some different ways you can, let's go to the PCs. Yeah, look at replacements. So obviously purchase date is just one of them. We've got warranty date as well, the amount of RAM, whether or not the PC has an SSD or a hard drive still, and then operating system. Most of you probably know that Windows 7 is end of life in January of 2020.
Right.
So if you haven't made plans to replace those PCs, please do call us up. We've got information for you. But this is a way you can see I coded it in red, yellow, and green. So those red laptops and desktops are going to be the ones you want to look at replacing first.
Yep. And something to keep in mind is when you are purchasing computers, let's say you're buying them upfront with let's say desktop computers with a 5-year warranty, your actual cost per year can be lower if you're buying it with appropriate specs to last that time. So an appropriately sized SSD, enough memory, if that's enough CPU, your users will get an impact immediately in that they'll be feeling the higher performance and more efficient, but then your cost of ownership over that total of 5 years will actually be lower than if you're buying, cheaper, lower cost, lower capable computers up front. And you kind of have to prioritize. Usually what we'll do is say, okay, laptops maybe are more like the 3-year. It can be hard to get 5 years out of a laptop.
Mine's still running great after 3 years, so it depends on how good of hardware you put in it.
Exactly. Another thing would be understanding the different roles that are in your organization. An engineering PC, for example, you don't want to put a normal PC budget cost on that of let's say $800 or $1,000 or whatever for a desktop, when it's going to cost you $3,000 with all of the extras and the workstation graphics card and everything that they need for that department.
Very good. So yes, lifecycle planning. We've got network assets here, switches, firewalls, APs. Typically 5 to 7 years for those. But again, depends.
It really depends, right? So there's again business as usual versus what can really change your budget is if what you have as a platform is no longer really serving your needs. So if, for example, you have basic wireless, but now some business cases come about where you really need stronger wireless for something, you're not going to necessarily get your life cycle around that. Same thing on server, but server gets a little bit
tricky.
It's because this is where we see a lot of change going on in organizations in terms of their server needs. Obviously, the cloud and SaaS, so software as a service-based cloud applications, are really changing what we're depending on server infrastructure for. But I think something that can be really helpful is getting a business as usual, or in other words, if the organization's needs do not change, what would our costs be? So even if we're looking at switching away from prioritizing or depending on our in-house server resources, what would it look like to replace that? And that can help you develop a baseline. So that way, when you are looking at these new things, you understand what your baseline costs would be if you stayed where you are. So, if you're just talking about moving to some new cloud software, like a new ERP system, and it's going to cost your organization $30,000 a year in licensing, if you're not looking at what it costs you to replace your existing server infrastructure along with that, you really have a limited view or a limited understanding, and your decisions may not be as informed as they should be. Right.
Great. Any questions on that section before we move on? I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
Great.
So recurring costs is an important one.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of subscription-based services out there. It seems like everything is going to that subscription-based model. So we put some logos up here on the screen of just some examples. And these include things like that are monthly, yearly, or even over multiple years. So for example, Office 365, typically that is a per user monthly cost, whereas Adobe might be a yearly, whereas your Cisco Meraki license it might be a 3 or 5 or 10-year license. Yeah, whatever it is. So
what's interesting though about this area is you get into what should be within the IT budget versus like the department budget.
Right.
And so this is different for every organization. But if the marketing team needs Creative Cloud, right, should that come out of the marketing budget or the IT budget?
Definitely the IT budget. We've got much better things to spend our money on. So yeah, the big point here is just dig really deep to find all of those hidden costs. There are a lot of, talk about shadow IT costs.
Right, there can be really hidden costs because oftentimes you have departments or individual users signing up for different services that you may not know about.
And I've seen that like with Dropbox a lot, like people having personal Dropbox accounts or paying for business on their personal credit card and then expensing it.
Exactly, or it might be in a department budget, it might be in petty cash, it might be in reimbursements, so that can be difficult to track.
Yeah, so as much as you can, dig deep. get a good understanding of what's included, what's not included, and then when those recurring costs will hit the budget. So for example, figure out how much money is actually going out every single month, which quarter are those yearly costs going to hit, and then make sure those 2, 3, 4, 5-year licenses are scheduled out as well. So I think we do have a part in our spreadsheet for that. Yep.
Showing you, roughly where that's going to fall in the year when that's out, understanding what that commitment is.
Yep, that'll be really helpful as you go to actually create your budget, which is step number 4. So draft.
This is the easy part, right? Just do it.
Easy, yeah.
It's like an essay or a word, a book report, right? Just write it out. Yep. What is there to it?
So yeah, business as usual, like Adam was speaking about. So this is if, you don't have any big changes, you're not supporting those initiatives from other departments. So what does it look like if your company just exactly as it is today, no improvements, how much would you spend? And then we want to add to that.
Build a differential in some ways, right? Yeah, exactly. And that can really be important to help build a good relationship with the business decision makers, financial decision makers, and the departments as well. If a department is endeavoring on a new product development and then there's changes to IT to support that, those costs should be linked to that, right? So that everybody understands where that cost is coming from and that it's in support of this new initiative. So if you just bear that kind of on the back end without any really discussion or any documentation of that, it can sour kind of the understanding of IT. Why are we going over, right? Again, cost overages can be a big impact.
Yep, so in this drafting process, you're going to take all that information that you gathered in steps 1 through 3, including recurring, all of your hardware, and put that into a budget.
And really get it to an executive summary level, right? We want to simplify, we don't want to overwhelm. We want to make sure that we get to the core and understanding where these costs are linked, what departments or what functions they're supporting.
Yep, and then break that up into quarterly spends as well, like we talked about, so that finance knows exactly when those items will hit the budget. Great, and number 5, align to company goals.
Right, so going back to that research level and understanding, just writing down what are our goals, what's our mission statement, what are we trying to achieve. That can really go a long way to help build that support for these different expenses that are coming up or these changes that you want to make to the environment to support that. So clearly outlining those items, where spend is associated with that, and then kind of creating a budget associated with the projects that the teams want to initiate. If you can get to where that's a proactive conversation, it's much better than the scenario where a lot of IT functions or IT teams are, where the department says, hey, we're doing this.
Give us the money, right?
do what you need to do to make whatever it is that we're doing happen. And it's far more a negative impact to the company culture, the IT relationship to the rest of the company, if it's not, you're not getting ahead of that and being a part of the discussions.
Well, and it's showing that you are taking a bigger picture view of this. Like, it's not that I just want a new computer and I want this new software because it's going to make my life so much easier. It's about like, how can IT actually be a driver of the company achieving its goals and actually like exceeding them, right? Like instead of it being like, the IT department, like as a negative thing, like we are showing our leadership team that we can go around, talk to people, make a plan, and then be a supportive part to the organization. So that's what this is. So don't go into this conversation just talking about, how cool the latest OS update is, or, really
as much as we may want to.
Right. It's really like geeking out, like make sure this is what goes right into number 6 is speak the language of the people that are in the room. So they might not necessarily care about the weeds and the details. So make sure you are like line items, those line items speak directly to things that matter to them.
Exactly. And then oftentimes you have different dynamics in the team where you have different advocates, knowing who is really understanding why something needs to happen, building that political capital, and then helping everyone to understand all the ways that IT touch the rest of the company. Again, you build that project plan out and then you ask, well, what of these projects and these initiatives need or depend on IT? And the vast majority of the time the answer is basically all of them. Right? And then going back to the pain points, how we plan to address those, how do we improve those? Those are really strong selling points in many cases of why a new relationship to IT spend is often necessary.
Right. Yep. And we're talking right now about when you go in and pitch this budget, but these are things that you can be doing throughout the year, is reminding people how important technology is to everything in the organization. So yes, it's super important in this meeting, but make sure you're also being a technology evangelist every day of the year.
Yeah, so with that, we really kind of get to the Q&A section. If we have any questions that have come up, otherwise I know this is not a super interesting topic, and a lot of you may already have a lot of these basics or this plumbed out. You may be experts, although if that's the case, I don't think you'd probably be on this webinar, but
yeah.
wrong.
And feel free here to chime in with super specific questions to your environment. I'll probably let Adam field those, but wait just a couple minutes. I don't see any coming in yet.
So yeah, I think with that, we'll probably wrap up. This will be posted and recorded so that you can access it later. And if you want to have somebody else see it, or if you say this is really good for someone else, that's available to you. But the other side of that is we want to continue to develop these kind of content, these webinars, and really engage with the community so that we're really sharing knowledge and experience that you want to see. So feel free to contact us through whatever means to suggest alternative topics or things that you'd like to see us cover in future.
Yep, and we'll be sending out the slides, the template that we've been showing, as well as a recording of this webinar. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks Ryan and Sam in the background there.
Yep. Have a great Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. Take care.
See ya.